The club lights danced lazily across Lara's flushed face, blending her mortification with muted hues of purple and gold. A humid haze shrouded the room as her pulse thundered louder than the bass line. She had entered uninvited and unnoticed, but what she saw hit her with the precision of a dagger. There, entangled on the scarlet love seat in the far corner, was Jen, her situationship, a term born from their lack of clarity yet excess of passion, straddling some guy's thigh, giggling as his hands snaked around her waist.
Playful.
Lara scoffed at the euphemism. The glint in Jen's eyes wasn't innocent, and her hushed moans weren't something you'd find in jest. Her heart clenched, bile rising in her throat. Yet, among the rage and ache, betrayal ran the deepest, a scorching undercurrent that drained her of air. The ride to the airport was a blur, punctuated only by the pounding ache in her chest and the sting of Jen's laughter in her mind. Dressed in ripped jeans and a snug white shirt, Lara's mind reeled as she touched the welt of her wired bra, now biting cruelly against her heavy, restless curves. As the taxi skidded to a halt, she could feel her composure slipping further away. With nothing but her passport and the frayed edges of sanity, she headed into the security line, determined to bury the remnants of Jen in the distant streets of Seoul. Lara shuffled closer to the security check. The line was excruciating, each shuffle forward more drawn out than the last. But all that faded when her gaze fell on her. The security officer was tall and commanding, with piercing green eyes that locked onto each passenger with an unnerving precision. Her name tag read Hanna. The bold letters shimmered against her starched uniform, as if daring Lara to remember every curve beneath it.
"Step forward,"
Hanna said, her voice low and slightly raspy, feminine authority wrapped in subtle allure. As Lara passed through the metal detector, an ominous beep filled the air.
"Please step aside for a manual check,"
Hanna added, motioning to a secluded corner. Her hands hovered briefly before gesturing toward Lara's torso.
"It's likely your underwire bra."
Heat rushed to Lara's cheeks as she stammered.
I don't.
"Remove your shirt, ma'am,"
Hanna said, her eyes firm but tantalizingly unreadable. Lara hesitated, fingers brushing the hem. Her shirt, pulled tautly over her curves, revealed more than it hid. Trembling slightly, she slipped it off, revealing the lacy indigo bra, now standing accused. Her chest berries, hardened from a mix of air conditioning and flaring desire, peeked defiantly through the mesh. Hanna's composure shifted, imperceptibly to most, but glaringly obvious to Lara, whose inner instincts were suddenly alive with electricity. As the officer's gaze darted, briefly but unmistakably, Lara felt power tip delicately in her favor.
"Turn around,"
Hanna ordered. Lara obeyed, her breath hitching as warm hands brushed down the curve of her waist to her hips, deliberately pressing beneath the edges of her jeans. The deliberate slowness, it wasn't protocol, it was pleasure, disguised as professionalism. Lara suppressed a shiver, unable to help the soft sigh escaping her lips.
"That'll do,"
Hanna said, after what felt like an eternity. But the slight curve of her lip suggested this encounter wasn't over. As she handed back Lara's boarding pass, their fingers brushed. Lara held her gaze, an invitation unspoken, yet crystal clear. With her confidence swelling, she scribbled her number on the nearest scrap of paper. Sliding it discreetly toward Hanna, she added a whispered,
"Thanks, officer,"
before walking away with deliberate sway in her hips. As she reached her departure gate, Her phone buzzed. Unknown number.
Nice curves.
Lara's stomach flipped. She glanced back towards security, spotting Hanna watching her. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. Lara.
Thanks. Want to see more?
With a wicked smirk, she unclasped her bra in the restroom and snapped a picture, angling it just right so her glossy, inviting chest berries teased from the frame. She captioned it,
Juice on me. Want to come squeeze?
As she hit send, she stopped in her tracks. Her boarding time loomed closer, but every fiber in her body rebelled. Did she truly want to leave after meeting her? In an impulsive whirlwind, Lara canceled her ticket. That night, she booked a room at a nearby boutique hotel with one thought replaying in her mind. If she shows up, she'll find a feast waiting. The warm hues of the setting sun poured through the sheer curtains, dancing across Lara's skin. The plush hotel couch cradled her curvaceous frame as she reclined upside down, her legs draped over the armrest, her dark hair cascading onto the floor. The day's whirlwind of emotions buzzed faintly in her mind, confusion, longing, and a budding curiosity for Hanna that simmered into a new kind of tension. Lara closed her eyes, letting the ache of her thoughts ebb into the sensation of her own touch. She hadn't allowed herself such freedom in months. Her fingertips traced lazy circles over her bare stomach, inching upward with every pass. A flush crept across her cheeks as her body began to respond to the anticipation in the air. The sharp chime of her phone startled her. Heart pounding, Lara reached for it, slightly breathless. A message flashed across the screen. A photo. It was Hanna. The selfie captured her in partial shadow, her lips parted in teasing, her short teal hair slightly messy. But the real attention grabber was her chest, framed by a fitted top pulled low enough to expose her toned collarbone and part of her bare skin. Her tongue extended provocatively toward the curve of her breast, playfully attempting to reach a tiny mole near the edge of her darkened areola. Below the photo, Hanna's caption read,
Dreaming of me already? Care to make it real?
Lara's cheeks burned. Her reply was almost instinctive. Lara.
You shouldn't tempt me like this. You don't know what you're awakening.
Hanna.
Oh, but I think I do. Are you ready to show me just how fiery you can get?
Lara bit her lip, her fingers trailing lower as her body betrayed her growing need. Lara.
What if I'm more than you can handle?
Hanna.
Try me.
Caught in her own rhythm of pleasure, Lara moved slowly, savoring every sensation, every wild thought of Hanna. Her head swam in bliss, and her moans barely reached her ears over the low hum of her fantasies. Then came the sound, a knock. Lara stilled, blinking into the golden light of her hotel room, her breath caught halfway in her chest.
Who is it?
She called, her voice soft, but with an unmistakable edge of seduction. From the other side of the door, a low, husky whisper drifted toward her.
I'm here to make you lose control.
The voice murmured.
To make you surrender to everything you're trying to hold back. Let me in. I saw you through the window, your body moving like that, and I couldn't stay away. Let me be the one to touch where you want it most.
The boldness in his words left Lara's heart racing. Her body grew warm again, fueled by equal parts intrigue and defiance.
Oh, really?
She teased, her voice thick with coy amusement. And what makes you think I'd let you in?
I can already hear it in your voice.
He continued, his tone dripping with a predatory confidence.
The way your breaths catch, the way you're fighting what you want. Open the door, and I'll take away every ounce of control you have left.
Lara hesitated for only a moment. Her hand hovered over the door handle, trembling with the weight of her choice. Was this reckless? Undeniably. But as her body tingled with anticipation, she realized that recklessness was exactly what she craved. She turned the handle slowly. The door creaked open, revealing a tall man with piercing dark eyes and an unmistakable air of dominance. Without hesitation, he stepped in, shutting the door behind him.
Trust me.
He whispered, his voice molten as he produced a sleek, dark blindfold from his pocket. Before she could protest, he tied it gently over her eyes, guiding her hands to the door to steady her. Lara gasped as he pressed against her, his breath hot against her ear.
Every curve of you is art.
He murmured.
I watched you through that window, the way your body moved. I've never seen anything so maddeningly beautiful.
She exhaled a shaky breath, heat pooling at her core as his words washed over her. His hands traced her waist, lingering at the curve of her hips.
Turn around.
He ordered, his voice firm but tantalizing. She obeyed, her blindfold heightening every sensation as he pressed her softly to the door. Her breaths came faster as she clung to the tension building within her.
You know exactly what you're doing.
She whispered, her voice tinged with fire and need. He chuckled, his breath warm against her stomach as he knelt before her.
You're even more responsive than I imagined.
He murmured, his lips now tracing a slow, deliberate path lower. The sensation sent a shudder through Lara, her hands gripping the edge of the door for balance as his mouth met the most sensitive part of her body. A soft cry escaped her lips, her body arching into him as her mind swam in a haze of pleasure.
You taste as incredible as you look.
Keith growled, his words sending sparks of electricity through her. Lara bit her lip, barely able to contain herself, her mind drifting to how much she craved more of him. Images of his strong body and teasing touch mingled with fantasies she hadn't dared to voice aloud. Her hands moved to lift the blindfold slightly, desperate to take in the man who had brought her to the brink. But just as her fingers brushed the fabric, the sound of a knock startled her, breaking the trance. The knock was followed by a familiar voice, playful yet firm.
Lara, I hope I'm not interrupting something. Or maybe I hope I am.
Hanna.
Lara froze. She reached for her robe but found nothing in reach, leaving her utterly exposed as she opened the door. Hanna leaned against the doorway, her teal hair glinting in the light, and her lips curled in a smirk.
Well, well,
Hanna teased, stepping into the room without waiting for an invitation.
looks like you've been keeping busy.
Hanna, this is,
Lara stammered, realizing she hadn't even learned his name.
Keith.
He said smoothly, standing and offering Hanna a sly grin.
I was just keeping her company.
Hannah's eyes lingered on him, and Lara noticed her breath hitch ever so slightly.
Company, huh?
Hanna mused, running her hand through her hair as her gaze traveled back to Lara, who was still leaning against the doorframe, completely bare.
Seems like you were doing more than that.
Keith crossed his arms, his confidence palpable.
Care to join?
He asked, his voice low and inviting. Hanna arched an eyebrow, her smirk deepening as she stepped closer to Lara.
Only if she's okay with sharing.
She purred, her hand brushing lightly against Lara's shoulder before trailing down to trace the delicate curve of her cleavage, her touch light but electric. Lara's breath caught in her throat, her mind spinning at the turn the night had taken. Her eyes flicked between Keith and Hanna, her desire for both of them mixing with a daring sense of excitement. Hanna, sensing Lara's hesitation, leaned in, her lips brushing softly against her ear as she whispered,
Tell me to leave if you don't want this. But I can see it in your eyes. You do.
Keith chuckled from behind her.
Looks like I'm not the only one who can't resist her.
Lara exhaled shakily, finally finding her voice.
Stay. Let's see where this goes.
The energy in the room was electric, a mix of tension, desire, and curiosity enveloping the trio. Keith stood tall, his sharp features accentuated by the warm hotel lighting. Hanna, still in her airport security uniform, exuded playful dominance as she let her fingers trail down Lara's bare arm.
You've been holding out on me.
Hanna murmured, her gaze flicking from Lara to Keith, a teasing glint in her eyes. Lara's breathing grew heavy, and her legs felt weak as Hanna's warm breath teased her. Keith, not to be outdone, slid his hands lower, resting them on Lara's hips before gently turning her to face him. His voice was a soft command.
Look at me.
Lara raised her eyes to meet his. Keith traced a finger along her jawline, tilting her chin slightly upward before claiming her lips with a kiss that left her gasping. Hanna stepped to the side, watching them with an almost feline intensity. She began unbuttoning her shirt slowly, revealing smooth-toned skin and the thin black strap of her G-string.
Don't forget about me,
she said with a smirk. Keith chuckled, his attention momentarily drawn to Hanna.
Not a chance.
Lara, emboldened by the moment, reached for Hanna, pulling her close as their lips met in a kiss that was soft at first but quickly deepened. Keith watched, his expression a mix of amusement and hunger. Hanna ran her hands through Lara's belly button.
You're full of surprises,
she said, her voice breathy as their lips parted.
You haven't seen anything yet?
Lara replied, her confidence blooming. The conversation ebbed into silence as the three of them drifted into a tender rhythm of connection. Keith, his natural charm softened by a sincerity that Lara hadn't expected, kissed her hand before standing.
Come on,
he said, his hand extended to her.
Let's rinse off the rest of the night.
Hanna stood next, sliding her arm around Lara's waist as they led her to the bathroom. The luxurious marble shower reflected the dim glow of the room as steam began to rise, filling the space with a warmth that mirrored their shared energy. As the water cascaded down, Lara felt hands on her shoulders, her waist, her back. Hanna gently massaged soap onto her skin, her touch light and sensual. Keith moved behind her, his strong hands washing away every knot of tension she had carried for weeks. They weren't in a rush. It wasn't hurried or frantic, but languid and intentional. Every moment felt like an unspoken vow, a celebration of letting go and embracing the present.
Let yourself feel it,
Hanna whispered, her lips brushing Lara's ear as her hands traced down Lara's arms.
I already am.
Lara replied, tilting her head back and closing her eyes as the water poured over her face, washing away not just the soap, but her doubts, insecurities, and the shadows of a love that had hurt her. Wrapped in fresh towels, the three returned to the bed, laughter replacing the earlier passion. Stories flowed easily between them, Keith speaking of his wild travels, Hanna sharing mischievous tales of her life at the airport, and Lara finally opening up about her struggles, her fears, and her hopes.
You're stronger than you think.
Keith said, his voice resolute. Hanna chimed in, her fingers gently playing with Lara's hair.
And you're braver than most. Not everyone has the courage to start over.
Lara felt a warmth bloom in her chest, not just from the compliments, but from the way she believed them. For the first time in years, she felt whole, seen, and desired, not because of what she offered, but simply for who she was. As dawn broke, the city beyond the curtains stirred to life. Lara stood by the window, gazing at the pinkish sky. Keith and Hanna were asleep, their bodies intertwined in peaceful slumber. She glanced at her reflection, her bare skin glowing in the soft light. She felt new, lighter. Her phone buzzed with a notification. The flight to Korea she had missed now felt like a decision rather than a mistake. Smiling to herself, Lara stretched her arms above her head, exhaling deeply.
I'm ready,
She whispered. The memories of the night would remain etched in her mind, not as a secret shame, but as a turning point. She had tasted freedom, both physically and emotionally, and she was done carrying the weight of her past. The sun had fully risen, painting the city with golden hues. Lara slipped out of the bed carefully, leaving Hanna and Keith still entangled in their dreams. The cool floor beneath her feet felt grounding, reminding her that she wasn't just in a momentary escape anymore. This was her new reality. Her suitcase sat open in the corner, clothes neatly folded, though now they seemed like relics of another life. As she got dressed, choosing a casual yet crisp white blouse and fitted jeans, she took a deep breath and smiled at her reflection. Gone was the doubt-ridden woman who had rushed to the airport seeking a retreat from pain. Standing in her place was someone unburdened, someone radiant. Lara wrote a note on the hotel stationery and placed it by the bedside.
Last night was unforgettable, but I need to see where this newfound strength can take me. Maybe we'll meet again on a different path, but for now, thank you for everything. L.
She paused briefly, watching them sleep peacefully before grabbing her bag and leaving the room. Returning to the airport, Lara felt an uncanny sense of calm. She no longer felt like a fugitive running from heartbreak. Now every step she took was deliberate, her confidence practically illuminating her path. When she reached the check-in counter, the staff greeted her with a pleasant smile. "Good morning, ma'am. New flight today?"
Yes.
Lara replied, her voice firm.
One-way ticket to Seoul.
The attendant processed her request quickly, and soon she was holding her boarding pass. As she turned away, a familiar figure caught her eye. Hanna, still in uniform, her hair tied back in its signature teal streak. Hanna spotted her immediately, a smile tugging at her lips as she walked over.
Didn't think I'd see you here again.
Lara chuckled softly, her cheeks slightly pink.
Well, some plans can change overnight.
Hanna tilted her head, amusement sparkling in her eyes.
Seoul, huh? I hope you find what you're looking for.
Lara nodded.
I think I already have. Now, I'm ready to see how far it can take me.
They shared a moment of silence, charged with understanding but free of expectation. Hanna smirked, leaning in close for a whisper.
If you ever decide you want another round of adventure, you know where to find me.
As Lara boarded the plane, she felt the weight of the past fully leave her shoulders. She settled into her seat, pulling out a notebook and pen from her bag. Her hand hovered over the page for a moment before she began writing, the words pouring out effortlessly.
Washing the sins off doesn't mean forgetting them. It means turning them into stepping stones. Steps toward freedom, toward loving yourself in ways you never thought possible. Last night, I discovered something about myself. That strength doesn't come from avoiding your desires, but in embracing them without fear.
She smiled at the thought and looked out the window. The plane's engines roared to life, ready to carry her toward a new chapter.